We're live. You'll have to excuse me. I just got back from a run. It's good for you, though. Just laying out a graph here. Holly Hiram. Big power. Big, crazy power. So we are live. It is 3/7/16 or so. I'm doing it a little bit early. Because I wanted to talk about the video that I just posted, which is finally the M90 on the 5.3 liter. And just as we had talked about and all the lead up to this, after running it all the stuff on the 4.8 and making over 500 horsepower, we thought, well, what happens if we put it on a bigger motor that's making a lot more power, or will make a lot more power? And it did. It didn't quite follow, exactly. But I think that's because now, unlike the first video that I did where I proclaimed incorrectly that we were, we're at the limit of the supercharger. Now I think we're getting there. Now I think we're getting close. I don't think we're done. I don't think we're done making power with this one, especially after we do more porting to the inlet side. And then the guys from, I'm going to sending them out now. I brought both housings home. So I'm going to stick them in the mail and get them to the JOKERZ guys and see about doing two of those, one of which will run as a single, and then run it again and see how much power it makes, so we can get a big single power number. But we're doing twins on it, so that will be very cool. And now as often happens with so you guys will be able to tell me. You won't know till down the road a little bit, but you'll be able to tell me. I told you so. You'll be able to tell me that. Remember, Richard, you always said, like, just get stuff done. It's like Freiberger's thing. Just don't get it right. Just get it running. Just make it happen. Get the test done. Now the whole twin thing has evolved into something grand and grandiose and way overboard. But it will definitely be cool. So that will be fun. But I do want to run the single. I want to run the next video. The next video that comes up is either going to, well, let's see. This will be our poll. For the intercooler. Okay, should I learn how to spell first? Should I do the L78 396 video before I do the M90 intercooler video? So let's see what people have to say. Let's see which one they kind of want more. The blower thing worked out really good. And honestly, I don't know how much of a gain we got from doing the porting. Probably helped. But when you look in there and see, if I showed you some up close and personal shots of the thing, there's still a pretty good ski jump in there. I tried to radius it after the guys from Mahovitz, John and Gary, did the machining to that. They definitely opened it up, but you'd have to like bore it all the way through almost. And then you run into problems where the mounting bosses are for the rotor packs. And, there's all kinds of things in there. And that's what I'm hoping that the guys from JOKERZ can cure, because they probably know where all of that is and what they can get away with, I'm sure. And so they can go in with their magic 15-axis milling machines, make all that magic happen. But, getting more air in is always good. But I think, like with anything, when we're looking at what is the airflow restriction, like what is the problem thing, what is the big thing right now, and we have a giant size throttle body on it, or a throttle body that can support way more power than we have now. Although getting up near 600 horsepower is when I would start thinking about going from a 92 to a 102. But as luck would have it, I have a 102 throttle body. At least the adapter that I have will accept a 102 millimeter throttle body, because that's what it was originally made for. So if we made the opening even bigger, that would be okay too. But I think the throttle body is not going to be the restriction. The adapter is not going to be the restriction. I don't think that inlet size, it'd be interesting maybe to flow it and see what's going on, to see what the flow level is of that. But I think now past that is our problem. I think we need to improve the flow, past this 92 millimeter opening, and then into the rotor pack, and then on the discharge side, to where ultimately, let's say that the rotor pack itself becomes the restriction. That's ultimately what you want to do. So that would be interesting. that if we could get to that point. So we'll see if that happens. Some guys have suggested, and I think it's probably a good idea, to rebuild the rotor pack, have it recoded or something. I don't know that I'm going to do that. Quite honestly, it already has a lot of carbon buildup on it. And I had asked that question on another video. It has a lot of carbon deposits on it. And I think that it probably has good sealing already. I'm thinking that has filled in all the holes, because if it attaches itself, it's going to attach itself to areas where there's no contact. So it has essentially filled those voids. That's my reasoning. Somebody let me know if they think that that's accurate. But I think it has filled those voids. And it's like, I think about it like extrude honing goes where it builds up pressure where there's resistance against it. And then that's where it ends up doing porting. This is kind of the same thing. You pour it in and it fills in the areas where things are not touching. So I'm hoping that that's the case. Having no idea what the lifespan of these blowers are, or what happened before I got a hold of this blower. I mean, we're already way over spinning it, and I don't know what kind of shape it is in. I know one of these blowers had, the one that I'm using on the motor, the oil in it, the gear oil that was in it when we drained it and took it apart, was pretty dark. So I don't think it had ever been changed. It didn't look like it. The other one, the red one, definitely had been changed because we had done that beforehand. So that stuff was in pretty good shape. In fact, the oil that I used in the motor, that in the blower that we used on the motor for this test and for all this testing, I used the oil from the other blower because I took it apart and drained it into a pan because I didn't have another blower kit, an assembly kit to put it back together with a container of oil and the red sealant that you're supposed to use and all that. I just used silicone. I know it's the wrong thing to do. I get it, but it worked. And so I just poured the oil in it, and I did a fairly cool thing. And I wish I would have done a video on it, but with the little plastic squeezy bottles that they give you full of the oil, you just cut the top off and you put what is essentially a funnel into that hole, and then you could squeeze it in there, and it doesn't drip or anything. What I did, not having that, is I took a Ziploc bag and poured it into the Ziploc bag and just snipped the corner of the Ziploc bag off and put the end of the bag in, and it just poured in like magic. I'm like, this is genius. Talking to myself again, like I do at West Tech all the time. But that worked out really good. But so used oil from another blower, and then I think it was the ultra gray silicone. I tried not to use too much, and I tried to not have any on the inside edge. And then so when it squeezed together, I was hoping that it just squeezed itself over and not inside the blower. And then it was just, if anything squeezed out, it was just on the outside. But it's not that big a deal. The bearings, I don't know. Like I said, the grease in the bearings still was there. I put a little bit more high temperature grease in there just because it made me feel better, and then slid it back together. Obviously, I sprayed everything off. Again, I was looking at, normally we would clean the inside of the housing and then clean the area adjacent to the bearings in the rotor housing. But I didn't even do that. I thought, you know what? I'm not going to clean the inside of the housing because, like the blower, like the rotor pack, I think that it fills in the areas that are not touching. So I think I would have, I may have hurt efficiency. Plus, it had already run that way before on the 4.8. So I'm thinking, let's just run it this way again and see what happens. And then if we want to do something more to it, like probably a new blower might be better. I don't know, a new coated rotor pack. And we when Jason did the welding on the inlet, welding the 3.5-inch tube on it, I thought, well, I wonder if we're going to warp the housing. As I was putting it together, I was spinning it like, come on, don't bind up, don't bind up, don't bind up. But it didn't, and it worked. And so sometimes the best laid plans work out okay, actually, and that did. So we ran the blower on there, and then I can't wait to talk about the intercooler, because there's also some intercooler things going on that we're going to talk about on the next video. And you guys let me know which you guys are going to let me know which one you want first. But there's cool intercooler stuff going on, and I'm going to have to make a change. Like when we do the new blower, I want to do it with the intercooler. And I want to do it with the intercooler, but I'm going to have to make a change with the intercooler. Not the intercooler itself, just the intercooler and how close it is to the plate that we have, the discharge plate. We're going to have a bigger spacer on there because there needs to be more room between there. We'll talk about that more when you guys get to take a look at the data. But speaking of data, if we take a look at the power curves, if you guys haven't watched the video, please go watch the video that I put up today on the running the M90 on the 5.3. So the 5.3 made a lot of power. It made 545 NA. So it was doing pretty well. And I ran both the NA motor and the blower motor on E85, but I also ran the NA motor on gas. So we'll be talking about that later on when we do more videos on other kinds of testing. But we ran both of those. But I ran this, we ran the NA motor, then we ran the Eaton. And if you look at the power curves at the end of the video, that's where I put them, you can see that the supercharger added quite a bit of torque. I mean, it would be definitely beneficial for, you know, the right kind of application. And we see pretty good gains. But as the NA motor starts, you know, coming up on the cam and start being efficient, the blower, I think, is getting past its, I don't know, usable airflow. It's getting up near the limit of something. We can kind of see that in the power curve. I don't think it's belt slip. It doesn't look like that's happening. It does show a falling boost curve, but this blower has always shown a falling boost curve since we put it on everything. It hasn't remained that constant. I'd have to go look on the mildest combination and see if it was able to continue to do that. But on this test, we dropped from 7.4 pounds to 5.6 pounds. And I kind of think that that's probably because the blower is running out of flow while the NA motor is wanting more at that point, because it's upward starting to make lots of power. And the NA motor at 6,000 is already making 500 horsepower or near 500. No, 6,150 is 500 horsepower. So the NA motor is really, you know, like I said, it's coming up on the cam and making good power. And the blower is, I think, kind of already done. So we run into some sort of inlet restriction or the case or the rotor pack or something. We did like I did before, we ran charge temperatures on all of this, and we ran, you know, before and after the intercooler, and we had pressure drops and all that stuff. And then we, like I said, also, I think I'm probably going to include the bubbler test for the blower guys, maybe in the intercooler video. I need to see how much video, how many clips I have and how much I have to include in all of that. Because I want to include the data logging as well from the Holly. So I probably will, you know, screencast-o-matic that stuff as well too. But I was happy, very happy at 600 horsepower. When I had the 600 horsepower number, I was like, yeah, that's a win. We're going to count that as a win. And it wasn't until I looked back, because while I'm making these runs on the dyno, I'm not looking at the horsepower ever while it's making the run. I'm darting back and forth between the air fuel and then the motor. So I'm looking to make sure that, you know, I don't have excessive blow by, or things not blowing up, or stuff's not catching on fire, or whatever catastrophic thing would happen. But mostly paying attention to the air fuel to make sure that nothing is going on there, because that gives me a really good indication. You're listening for the sound too. Is it doing the same thing that it's always doing? Does it sound weird? Is it breaking up? Is it hiccuping? Is it doing any of that? So I'm watching that. So it isn't until after I get done with that run and go, yes, it made it through another run, and the air fuel was, you know, spot on from when I did the tuning on it. And then I go back and look at the data and go, oh, okay, look, it made good power. And then after we saw that it made over 600, then I go back and started looking at the torque curve. I'm like, oh, that's kind of really nice. I mean, we have areas that are, you know, over 100 foot-pounds that are getting near 150 foot-pound gains. So that's pretty good, you know, that's pretty good torque. And that's kind of what these blowers are all about. I think, honestly, these will be really good on even milder, you know, 4.8s and 5.3s will be some pretty good stuff. Boost novice, the bubbler did drop boost quite a bit. And it dropped more at the beginning of the pull than it did at the end of the pull. So the blower dropped almost 2 pounds, or the bubbler doing a 3/8. I just took out a 3/8 pipe plug out the back of the high ram and it dropped it by almost 2 pounds. It's quite a bit. And the power's way off. As you might imagine, at 2 pounds, it's way off. But at the top, it was only 1.1 pounds. Camaro's in the building, not just in the house, in the shop. I'm in the shop. Got my great subject, blower porting. Yeah, I'm interested. I've never had a blower ported by anybody. So I mean, I've done some, and I've even done. I've actually done more than a few of these M90 blowers. But when I did it, I didn't do anywhere near what I just did on this one. But I also did more on the discharge side too. We would take the sharp edges off and radius and make it rounded, make it kind of a bull nose kind of thing. And I never had any back-to-back data on it. We did it and put the blowers together with those ported versions. But I don't know how much power it was worth. We never tested it. It's one of those situations. Or head gaskets and push rods today. Can you find a FLIR camera to film the blowers? Why you want to see what the heat differential is in the blower or something? We can take an I can shoot it with an infrared gun. The more the better. MLX head gaskets, BTR 7.75 long, 80 walls. Good. 15 axis. That's right. One of those. It does both space and time. That's pretty impressive. I got to find the ambition to assemble everything. My Dodge Neon is faster than your car. How's that for motivation? Ooh, dang. Throw some shade on them. Supercharger oil smells terrible. Yeah, it's kind of like gear oil. It's not good. I sometimes have an almost off-grid connection. Uh-oh. You don't like the smell? I mean, after a bunch of years and hard pulls, it's pretty rank. It's pretty bad, yeah. Some guys lose interest and then stuff sits basically in the mountains. Can't always get connection. Well, Rex, we're glad you're here, man. The NA combo would have made even more with better heads, I think. Rec part heads for the win. Yep. Especially on a 5.3, right? The torque curve, yep. The torque plateau. I guess it curves at the end. Would a 6-liter gain any power from an M90? A stock 6-liter doesn't make 600 horsepower, so it definitely would gain from this M90. Can you get a reman blower? You can get a reman blower for $1,300. Is it the same M90? I don't know. I would imagine this has got to be the most popular version, the most produced version of the M90. They had to have put it on millions of cars. Curious to see the blower on a 5.9 Magnum. We can make that happen. I just checked the website. It looks like an M90 for a Ford. Yeah, that's similar, but the inlet and the outlet and all that stuff it's different. I mean, the rotor pack is probably similar. I think it'd be about the same. It'd be much better going with a 112 on a 5.9 Magnum. A 112 will always make more power because it's bigger. The allure of the M90 is just that you can find lots and lots of them, and 112s are not easy to find, and they're more money. Can't remember what static compression you have. Would more give you more horsepower from the same setup? Are you talking about that? Are you asking me, Ben? Are you asking? This is an L33 with the 220 heads, which are milled, but they're probably milled down to what a stock 799 head is. So I don't know if we've raised the compression on that. If we have, it's not very much. You're working the blowers much harder than usual. More heat to see accumulate. Better than a junkyard. It might be better than a junkyard, but it might not. It might not be better. It might not make more flow than the one that we have because it's all sealed up with a carbon. Supercharger oil is even worse. It stays on you longer than gear oil. I would agree with that. It's bad. Lots of cool stuff coming out of China. I'm not sure they're up to snuff with tolerances and heat treating and so on. Need to run a massive cal or no hood is the only issue I see with this M90 setup in a daily application. Well, for a daily application, you wouldn't run a high ram. You would run a low ram, and an M90 on a low ram will fit under the hood. Because when you an M90, I'm pretty sure it will. Dow reached a new record. Good. Yeah, we have to put that on there to be sure, but I'm pretty sure it is. I know that when I measured them, I put the high ram and the low ram on the table next to each other, and then when we put the intercooler on the low ram from the guys from Tick, that height was almost the same as the high ram height. At what size pulley does the M90 seem to lose efficiency? Well, that's not actually the question, because the amount of boost that the motor or that the blower provides with any given pulley is a function of what you're applying it to. So it would be different if we had a pulley on there on a stock motor or the same pulley on there with the motor that we have here. The boost pressure will be dramatically different. It'll be a lot higher on a stock motor. So it's not the M90 losing efficiency. It also has to do with your combination. I think that ultimately there is a blower speed that the M90 won't be good anymore, and we may find that. But guys have run them over 20,000 RPM. Truck intake is about 9 inches. So then the question becomes, if we can get more air in between the rotors, is that more volume? Does it provide more airflow? We'd have to test that, I think, to find out. I'm sure some blower guy knows the answer to that. Finally put my eBay 49cc 2-stroke on my bike. Scoots about 25 miles an hour on the flats and struggles on hills. Carb not rich enough for this cold Wisconsin weather either. I think I have an issue with the GoPed too. I'm going to have to fix something. I took a look again at the carburetor, and somebody had mentioned on here that the carburetor is adjustable, but they hide the adjustments. There's no adjustment on this carburetor. and the GoPed isn't a California thing. It's the factory carburetor, I think, is the problem. This is a pretty old one. It's old school. Audi Q5 chargers make big power. My buddy's Q5 with ported blower ran 1060s in New Jersey. Wonder if one could be adapted to an LS motor. Do you know what size the Audi Supercharger is? Something will eventually let go inside the stock interior M90. So what normally happens is either you overspeed the bearings and the bearings go bad and lock up or come apart, or the rotors touch the housings. Think about getting a Jaguar M112 to modify and mount my 5.3. Not sure about the super long input shaft though. Yeah, I don't know about that, but a 112 is a good size. Can you turbo an M90? We did already. That video is up. We did the 3800 with the M90 on it, with the factory M90 on it, just like this one. In fact, one of these. And we ran the GT45 turbo blowing into the M90. The Audi SE is 2.1 or 2.2. That's good size then. That you could make some good power with that. What year did M90 come out? 97, I think, in the Grand Prix. There's a Fiero with a 3800 that's double huffed. That's good. I like that. Yeah, the compound stuff on those has been around for a really, really long time. Rich Foreman. Is Rich Foreman the guy who gave the heads to? Did they just recently make a new Trail 90? I think they did. I think I saw something about that. I'm still going old school. Old school 90. So we're a little conflicted here. Should I do the L78 396 video before the M90? 61% are saying yes, but 39 coming on strong. So get over and answer the poll. And also do hit the likes. We got 58 people and then 23 likes. And then the hot blowers to get the Gen 5 blower. That only came on later stuff though. Scroll on. Well, we're already getting near the limit of the blower sizes that you can fit on there. We'd have to go bigger on the crank. I think we could go down to a 2.5 pulley if we machine the snout even more. We already had to machine the snout to fit the 2.6 pulley on there. But I would stop going smaller on the blower pulley because you get to a belt wrap problem. And I would just put a bigger crank pulley on it. We're already using a factory truck crank, which is bigger than the 3800 crank already. But you can get ATI dampers if we change the setup on it and didn't have a truck feed system. If we tucked one in from a Corvette or one of these blower things, factory blower things, then we could put big crank pulleys on there if we wanted to. But I don't think we need any more pulley. And I enjoy your video you make, so I'm not biased in which one you choose. I enjoy learning. And honestly, one will come right after the others. So it's just an order thing. It doesn't matter. Shadow Ops, you're out. Go to the oversized crank. No need for dampers if you have a heavy belt. Well, I mean, it has a factory damper on it. Less pulley and more blowers. Well, we plan on doing that. We do plan on doing the double stuff. What I need to do is I need to get somebody to run one of these in the car. So somebody let me know if we're making 600 horsepower flywheel, what will that run in a good Fox body Mustang or something? It is cool to see about. I agree, Jet Black. I agree. It is cool to do these kinds of things sometimes to see what the maximum you can get out. We know that this is not the way you should go. If you're looking to go, like, let's say we get to 700, because 7 is the new 6 and 6 was the new 5. Let's say we got to 700 horsepower for some reason. You wouldn't pick this blower to go do that because somebody had mentioned it before that look at all the modifications that you have to do to the blower to make it do that. This is just when somebody decides, hey, look, I'm going all in on this. And then they keep going down a route that gets infinitely more expensive to do because as you the gains that you get smaller and smaller, and the price for those gains gets bigger and bigger. So they're inversely proportional, which is not a good road to go down when you're talking about money. And not just the money part of it, the frustration level. Because you spend lots of money and then don't get very much for that. You don't get very much value. So it's like, it's not a good thing. But when you're trying to find the limit, you got to do it. Yeah, that's Bruno barking. High 9, low 10, depends on the car and the driver. Oh, for 600, that would kind of be cool. If we could get one of these to run 9s, that would be awesome. Calculator 600 horsepower. My Fiero should run mid 9s. Nice. Done a 112 off of a Mustang on an LS. No, because we've done Tom DeMuse did an adapter plate that would accept the 122 off of the Shelby, the 5.4 and the 5.8. We ended up running a 2.3 liter blower on there, but a 122 will make obviously a lot more power than this. But we did that adapter plate designed to accept. I thought that said 112, but it is 122, designed to accept the 122. And Tom's driving around with one of those. He may have changed the blower now to something else, but he was driving around with one of those for a long time. So he has adapter plates for that for an LS. Would never forget you could get 600 from an M90. Yep. Could you do the M90 on a straight 6? Yes, that's planned. An M90 on the slant 6. All of those should get an M90 on it. Richard, I was told that you should only run 1030 weight oil with what? Vern. Know what I mean, Vern? It's one of my favorite commercials. Use an intercooler block. Yeah, we did that. That's the next video. Well, that's potentially one of the next videos. Even Chevettes, I agree. A Chevette would be cool to have. Come on back to me. Like that. Run the belt off the flex plate. Yep. Make an M90 bracket for drag racing. Oh, you mean a class for that, for only M90s? The Roush M90s would clean up in that because that's a better housing and stuff. An 85 Chevette with a factory Isuzu diesel on a 5-speed. That thing probably got good mileage, right? Inline 6s all need boost. I agree. And I think that the junkyard angle on these, the slant 6 and the 292, and what else? Trophy 4-cylinder. All of those are a good choice. Think about putting a cheap M90 and putting it on a K. What size pulley you think would make 8 to 10 pounds? I think you should run it with a pulley that it has, because I don't know what size crank pulley you have, but you also have a lot of engine speed. So just put the 3.8 on there and see what happens, and then you can always change it. Is that the only intake that will fit M90s? What's that? The high ram? The adapter plate that we made was designed to bolt the M90 to the high ram or the low ram. You had 5 Chevettes at one time? Man, you were rich on Chevettes. Could squeeze 75 miles per gallon out of the highway. That's pretty good. You could buy my 300 inline 6 after a road trip into Pennsylvania. I do want to get one. That's actually the other inline 6 I was thinking of. One of those will definitely get an M90. Sorry, what oil with Morel linked roller lifters? I was told 1030, but I started out running 1040 and 2050 in June here in Bakersfield. I think does the Morel lifter, is it a hydraulic roller lifter? 2050 seems a pretty far away from a 1030. What? How are your bearing clearances? What's your oil pressure at? So, Robert. Oh, the van is all rotted out? Two questions. Does the number of intake 90-degree turns affect the boost between the turbo and the intake? Minimally. That's not something you should worry about. I feel like the M90 does better than the old 142s. It'd be interesting to compare that. I work at O'Reilly's part-time while I'm in school. It's a good place to come. There's a lot of sharp guys here. See, we're at 50-50 now. We're getting close. 55% saying yes. My chair. Could be an earthquake, right? Or not. I'm going to go from top chat to live chat now that Bruno has told me that it's okay. One guy comes in with a 90s F250 with no rear drive shaft running on the front. So he's got a front wheel drive truck. It could be me wagging my tail. That would be a neat trick, huh? I remember how disappointed I was way back when I think it was my dad telling me that explaining to me about four-wheel drive stuff. I'm like, yeah, but you got all four tires spinning. Well, no. You can, but most of them don't. In fact, some of them are only two-wheel drive because they don't have a positive traction in the back and they don't have one in the front. And so it has one front tire and one rear tire. I'm like, that's a ripoff. There's a guy who did it on an Evo 7. It's pretty slick. Only like 600 horsepower. Nice. Does intake taper affect horsepower if manifold intake area is 3 times port area? Doesn't matter. Are you asking if the manifold, if the intake area is, are you talking about plenum? And intake taper can affect horsepower. I don't know what you mean if intake area is 3 times port area. I'm not sure where you're taking your relative measurements there. M90 would be good on big block for low RPM applications. Probably good for RV or something. Good torque would probably actually be pretty fuel efficient, especially if you kept the bypass valve. Yeah, we have the bypass valve functioning. Those are really the only two holes in the plate, is the discharge area and then the bypass valve. A taper of 1 to 2 degrees on the intake port is considered optimal. It's actually more than that. The other thing that happens with taper, which a lot of guys don't talk about, is that they talk about usually what Burns was talking about, is that if you taper something, you increase velocity is the idea. The other thing that happens with taper is you're changing the volume of the, you're also changing the volume of that runner because it's acting like one volume at the bottom and one at the top. So you're also affecting Helmholtz resonance when you do that. So is it true you can only use 1030 oil with roller lifters? Not with all roller lifters, but what I would suggest is you listen to the guys from Morel if they tell you what oil to use with their lifters, because I'm hoping, and I'm sure that they're pretty sharp guys, that they have done testing, and when they built their lifters, they built them with an orifice flow needing that viscosity of oil. So I would listen to what they say. It's going to be TSX bottom end and a K20 head, which I was given for $40. So stock came in, I'm guessing it'd fall off at 7,000. So do you think that Getaway, do you think that that's a 200 horsepower motor, or is it less than that? Can you fabricate some sort of carb to run the M90? Yeah, we talked about that. Well, we've talked about that many times, but it's just an adapter that goes from the throttle body flange going into the blower and a 90-degree elbow up to a carburetor pad, and then you just run the carburetor on top of that. King Supra, did you have a question about the Truck Norris cam? Robert, can someone take an engine meant to run 530, stick a high volume pump in it, and run 0-20? Yes, but you're confusing the change in pressure for, we're talking about a flow rate of the orifice in the lifter. Lifters are designed for a certain viscosity oil. They're not designed for a given pressure. So those are different things. You're looking at an oil pressure gauge and tried to juggle two things and get the same oil pressure. You can do that, although it's not going to match everywhere and it's not going to match at every temperature. But the lifter question is different. No, Steve, a huge taper won't help. In fact, most of the intake manifolds I run don't have any taper in them at all, and that works. It works great. Your pulley ratio should be less than 3-to-1. It's on that. If you're talking about the pulley ratio on that, for a 7,000 RPM Honda, you'll want it to be way less than 3-to-1. Put an Eaton M90 from a Super Coupe, unless you want the boost pressure to be really, really high. Put an Eaton M90 from a Super Coupe on my 4G63. Good power down low, but belt slips made 12 pounds. I want to see a big block Chevy plus an M90. Or it's too small, but would it be? It probably wouldn't be. It's not going to be on a stock one. So if we ran a if you're in, and then you have a reverse situation here where the blower wouldn't be able to feed the torque down low, but would be able to feed the horsepower up top. If you ran an M90 on a Gen 6, which is a 375 horsepower motor, the way that we run it on the engine dyno, we know the blower will work. We know that it'll feed that power output. So an M90, you know, that the boosted big block, a boosted otherwise stock Gen 6 454 is not going to make 600 horsepower. We know that the blower will support that. So it will work on a mild big block. How much does oil weight change power output for a lifter bleed point of view? It can be a lot. I've seen it on, I know when Mahovitz was doing the modular Ford stuff, those particular lifters, whatever he was testing, were real sensitive to the oil weight that he tried. So those had a dramatic effect on power. Other times we change oil and it doesn't do anything. So I think it has to do with the specific lifter and the specific flow orifice and how sensitive they are. What was an engine that said that made you really surprised for how good a power it made? There was a Ford racing motor that somebody brought in that was a crate motor that made a lot. It was a 331 or 347 or something, and it made over 500 horsepower. I thought it was pretty good. Do you plan on testing a 112? No, I don't plan on testing a 112. I run 112s on 03 Cobras a lot, and for the books that I did and for lots of testing for Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords. But I honestly don't really care about the 112 because they're hard to find and they're more expensive. So they're not a good choice, I don't think, for a lot of stuff. Is there an ideal back pressure to boost pressure. No, there's not. It depends on what you're trying to do. Would this can work with a TVS blower? Let's say I'm not even going to look at it, and I'm going to say yes, because it will. Yes, any camshaft that you put in there will work with a supercharger. What spring should I get for a BTR Truck Norris cam? Not the NSR one, 550 or BTR 560 or BTR. You don't need a 625 for that. Yeah, in fact, I think you can run a truck. What's the lift on a Truck Norris cam now? Is it 550 or something? I think that's a 550 lift one. I think you can put, yeah, 552. You can actually run that with, I thought you could. You could actually run that with factory LS3 springs, or you can run it with, BTR has Beehive springs for that, or you can run it with their lower lift dual springs. A 560 lift would be fine. Would an M90 fit a carbureted, distributed small block Chevy? Yes, because, well, I don't know. The blower would have to come up above the distributor, so I kind of see what you're saying now. I'd like to do a 122 on a 4.8 to 5.3 with a Holley low ram base. That's what Tom DeMuse's kit is, and we ran that already. So I ran a Ford racing blower, but on that same adapter plate and intercooler with a I think his wasn't a low ram. I think his was a like a Magnuson with similar kind of blower short runner deal. But he has that kit available to run that blower on there. I see 112s all the time in my area. I can pick one up and send it to you. I already have one. We have one. Sanchez has an 03 Cobra one. Like I said, it's just if I walk into a wrecking yard, and I go to wrecking yards all the time, I have never seen a 112. In the hundreds of times that I've been to a wrecking yard, I've never seen one. But I'll see a half a dozen at least M90s there all the time. So that's why we went down the M90 road. And we tried the 122 road also, because I ran the kit from Tom DeMuse. So we did the 122 also. I lost one of my lights over there. Ben, if you do twin M90s, you think you'd run twin throttle bodies? We will definitely run twin throttle bodies, and we won't have them joined together, and we'll just take the TPS reading off of one of them. Switching back to the 5-liter Ford, how do you know if there's an oil problem running 1040 or 2050 SAE VR valvoline? Richard's a celebrity at the junkyard. I have had people walk up to me and talk to me about the videos when I'm at wrecking yards. Do valve spring rates 1-to-1 change of the boost if running 3 bars? Should the intake and exhaust spring? Vern, I don't know what you mean by you're switching back to the 5-liter Ford. Are you switching back to the 5-liter Ford in your line of questioning, or or have you made a decision that you want to run a 5-liter Ford now instead of whatever else you were talking about? 57% are saying yes on the 396. I have an LC953 with a stage 2 truck cam, 600 lift. Now I have a 3200 stall converter. I'm not happy with the power past 4800. What would be a good pack 1218 compatible cam? I'm thinking Truck Norris. Yeah, what are the specs on that stage 2 truck cam though? I don't know what a stage 2 truck cam should actually work fairly well past 4800 RPM. Peak power shouldn't come till about 6,000. So is it a tune problem? Is it a tuner? Yeah, Michael points for the BMW subscription shade. And is that, those are linked to the heated seats too, right? My my troll spider sense is tingling. And we're turning and we're turning. Trying to get more over there. The truck makes good power. Just looking for more top end now. I don't need to worry about the stock inverter. So then you could go bigger on the cam. Like look at the, if you're feeling froggy, look at the BTR hot rod cam or the truck Norris, either one of those. Vern, I've run all kinds of different oil viscosities with 5-liter Ford roller lifters in a 302, and I haven't had a problem with them. I don't normally run 2050 and stuff, but we have. Normally it's 530, 1040 we'll do. I don't normally do 2050. We do lighter stuff than that. Just a Gen 5 or Gen 3 M90. This one was a Gen 5. I have a couple of Gen 3s also, which I want to try, but I have not yet. I suppose I could just swap the, is it a Gen 3 and a Gen 5 snout is the same, right? The drive assembly is the same. So I could just swap the snout with my pulley, or I could just put another hub on the Gen 3 stuff. Eric, is it summertime in northern Michigan? Yes, that's right. Yep, that's right, Michael. It's not in the user's manual. Gen 3 has a terrible inlet. Yeah, I'm familiar with the blowers. I have a couple of them. I have 2 of the Gen 3s and 2 of the Gen 5s. In fact, I have 3 of the Gen 3s. That one of them we cut up and used the housing as a, well, it's not cut up, it's just separated, I guess. Use the housing as the NA inlet on the 3800. Got a few of the M122 blowers laying around. If you'd like to test one of those. I already sent Tom's stuff back to him though, but I appreciate the offer. We made good power. We made almost 700 with a blower on his adapter setup with that. I think it was a 2.3 liter probably. Gen 3 has a terrible outlet. I thought it had a terrible inlet. It has both of those. It is different. Yeah, it's not rectangular. It's almost square. And then it has the mass air and the smaller mass air and smaller throttle body combination. You normally run 2050 during July and August in Bakersfield. It does get hot in Bakersfield. Jesse, so in the 3800 community, it was generally accepted that the Gen 5 wasn't worth porting. Not saying it won't make any gains, but it was accepted that it wasn't worth it. Who decided that? Did anybody actually ever test that to see if it was worthwhile? Also, the Gen 3 M90 has 2 bolt bosses protruding into the main opening. Have you made a video regarding how to read a cam card and understanding the numbers? No, I haven't. Vern, happy to help. Out there in Bakersfield. Out there in God's country. Yeah, Jesse, it's funny, and the 3800 community is not any different than every other engine family related community. You get the guys that are the experts there that either have had the money or they've been doing it a long time, or they have, their car runs nines and everybody else's runs 13s or whatever. And so everybody listens to them, but that doesn't mean that they've tested it. Oh, the Gen 5 is fine. And it might be on if you have a 3800 V6 and you're spinning the heck out of it already, it might be that, you don't want to port it. But then what happens a lot of times is people then use the excuse for why they're not doing it as it doesn't do anything or it's not worth very much. They always leave that little bit there. Oh, it's not worth very much. How much is that? How much is not very much? Is it 10? Is it 50? What is it? And I tend to think the way porting works is the higher that you're spinning it and the more power we're trying to make, the more of a gain we're going to get, which is normally how things work. I'd like to try it. I've never tried a ported M90. We'll see what happens. My buddy's Q5 has a factory water to air intercoolers running method injection. Do you think it would be advantageous to pull the brick style intercoolers out of the intake for less flow restriction for drag racing? I don't know. You'd have to see what kind of the things that I'd be concerned. There's a couple things I'd be concerned about. One, I'd be concerned about charge temperature. It's almost certain that the intercoolers will do a better job cooling the air than the water meth does. The other thing is distribution. Are you getting good distribution with the water meth setup? Normally that's not the case, especially with any kind of long runner intake manifold. That doesn't happen. The other thing is programming. Are you using the factory programming, which is relying on a charge temperature reading to therefore then adjust timing and or fuel? And can you get away from that? There are a lot of things to consider there. Are you at the flow limit where you're trying to process so much air across these cores, which now they are a restriction? Like, have you measured here's what I would suggest after going through all this and thinking about it. You need to measure the temperature drop or the pressure drop across the core. How much charge air, what's the difference in temperature going across the cores? And then what's the boost drop? If you have a 5-pound boost drop, you need to take them out of there. If you have a pound or a pound and a half drop in boost, I don't think I would change them. Online communities are prone to groupthink. That's very well put. That's exactly it. Vern is the worst place you ever lived. So it's not God's place. It's God's forsaken place. Inlet restriction on a blower can create lots of heat. Yeah, inlet restrictions for positive displacement blowers are not good. I see only benefits from porting it and raising the peak power. I think Morel would have had a big red warning about using a heavy oil in the small block for. I don't know. You should call him and talk to a tech guy there. Call him and ask him. Porting supercharger now, just add a turbo. So you got the supercharger for low end and the turbo for high end. Except that doesn't, well, two things. One, we already did that. So we already know what that does. We already did a turbo blowing into one of these blowers, and we know what that does. We know what that does on all turbos and blowers when you blow into them. But that doesn't answer the question. It doesn't answer the question about porting. What does porting do? How much does it add? Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? I have a 2400 stall converter on my 01 Sierra 383 Whipple 2.3. Why does it seem that 3200 stalls the norm? Trying to have a cam made for me by BTR. Because the stall speed of your converter is not a function of whatever they wrote on a piece of paper. It's actually a function of the power output of the motor, the torque output down low specifically. And if you have a positive displacement blower and that converter was rated at 2400 RPM on a stock 4.8, 5.3, whatever, and you're now making 200 or 300 more foot-pounds of torque in that RPM range, you're going to raise the stall speed of the converter. That's what happens. It's power. So what dictates the RPM limit of the M90? Heat or blow apart? I don't know. I don't know which one of those comes first. I do know which one of those comes first. We can talk about that. I don't know where the bearing speed checks out at because I don't know what bearings are in it, and I don't know if you can upgrade those. So somewhere above where I am, because I've run lots and lots. I mean, I've run 100 runs so far at this kind of blower speed. So it's not at this blower speed. The other thing to consider is if it is heat, this heat can happen at a much lower blower speed. So if we're running this pulley, but we're making 15 pounds because the motor that we're running it on is not a high horsepower NA motor, you can get these things too hot and the rotors can touch and destroy each other. So there's no absolute number. With the PRI, I got to see Cool Tech. I believe some of the greatest people on this rock are hot rodders, but I could be wrong. Yep, people are people. At what point will blower porting become economically viable? Water rotor tips to strip inside the M90. They don't strip those. They don't put strips on the M90s. Not that I know of. I've never seen it. They coat the rotors and replace the rotors if the rotors have big gouges in them in the outer edge that has kind of a flat section on it. Okay, we're going to close our poll at 58% saying yes. That's a win for the L78. Gen 3 definitely picks up power from porting. Well, we know that this blower picks up power from porting as well. We know that making the inlet bigger made more power. And I'm pretty sure we're going to pick up power from what JOKERZ does to it too. Whether or not that's necessary for a guy running a 3/4 pulley on a 3800 in that community, I don't think it would be. When I take a used M90 off a 3800, what do I need to do to check see if it's okay? Just go like this on the pulley and listen. Voo, 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 voo. Put your hand under it to see if it's making boost. If it spins, it wins. And on that note, it is time to go. I will be back tonight, though. If you have not, please go take a look at the video that I just put up on the M90 Supercharger 600 horsepower world record. It's not a world record. It's a world record for the highest horsepower M90 Gen 5 off of 3800 from the wrecking yard on Milliken on a 5.3 with a big cam. Is that enough? Is that a narrow enough specific world record? I will see you guys all tonight.